One.
So for the final project, Major Writing Assignment 3, I decided to do the painting and collage version, and I'm gonna explain why I painted or added these images to this postcard I have here. So right here, I decided to draw and paint the U.S.-Mexican border because to show the Mexican perspective of my father and the American perspective of my mother. So, in the Mexican perspective or father's side, my dad came from a town of Cerocawi, Chihuahua, and it's a well-known town due to the railway of Chepe that passes down the towns and other ones, which they hold unique culture and beautiful landscapes. And then what my dad would like always do with my grandparents or as work, he would ranch cattle and have an image here of him ranching cattle. And I painted this scenery of like how it would have looked like. For example, where my dad's from, in the town of Cerocawi, it is very rocky, but there's like flatlands where mostly people plant vegetables. And yes, my dad did plant vegetables such as maize. Maize is like a well corn, and it's used in daily diet of Cerocavi or other Mexican in general. For example, tortillas and stuff. And my dad was a very hard working man. Helping his parents in very poor side. And now I'm gonna explain the American side. So, my mother basically was from here and she was raised from here. So, I included where she, like, of course, had the opportunity to go to school and, like, had more options of life than my father. So, now going back to the Mexican side, my father, when he was becoming a young adult, he was like, desperate of, try to move on in life and questioned himself if he wanted to live in the US. So this means live in the US in Spanish because of, having low income with like small value of pesos. So, he decided to migrate or legally go to the United States and, go hope for a better future. And, he was mostly working on framing and on surrounding the Albuquerque community. And, my father met my mother and they had me first. But then at the age of 2, for the sake of having the family together and having each other and our sides, my mother and father decided to go to like immigration services or like lawyers of immigration to help my father legalize or ask for a pardon. And so right here in this image, we see like my father asking for pardon in Mexico, but fortunately he had to wait 2 years. And this is where, this is where the sadness, the negative emotions come in. For example, here we have my mother stressing out, only having me and her try to raise me by herself. And then we have my dad, working at Soriana. I mean, Soriana is a convenience store in Mexico, and it was pretty difficult for my father having extremely low pay and having like at least 2 or 3 jobs to work with, which was pretty devious. And right here, we also have the sadness of my dad, being separate from his family. But then I also added, the positive emotions right here. the red, orange, and yellow colors. So for these images of my grandparents, you know, I think both sides of the family with grandparents were amazing helping, you know, my parents. For example, my mother's grandparents giving us shelter, you know, helping us whatever we needed to like be sustained in the United States and, you know, keep living a good life. And for the Mexican side of my grandparents, my father's grandparents, you know, when they see him struggle, when they saw him struggle, like as Soriano, when they would go visit him in the city of Chihuahua, you know, my grandparents always told them to go to the ranch, and it was going to be a better life for him, you know, to not be suffering in the city and Mexico, which was really difficult at the time. And, you know, they always, you know, were there for my father, you know, gave him the house, food, and everything. And then we also have this drawing and painting here of like a father and son, you know, when my mother would like take me go see my dad. It was, how would I say, like a huge value of positive emotions, you know, that we would see each other again, and it was, you know, it was heartbreaking to, you know, have my father far away. And then we also have, you know, the family here with a lot of positive emotions throughout life. And of course we have a migrant worker here, positive emotions as well, working forward for, you know, the families from US or Mexico. And we also have this ICE agent here with negative emotions, you know, some of them being outrageously racist, or, you know, not being happy or positive towards another human. And yeah, so this is what we have. And, you know, we still have these three images where my dad mostly works in framing, but this picture, it's like very significant for our family because, well, of course, most of our income comes from framing with my father's work and able to give us an education for me and my brother, which I am thankful of. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.